Welcome to We Mean Business. I'm Steve Dorfman. So today we're going to talk about my new favorite book. And that's saying a lot because I'm reading 3 or 4 at a time sometimes, which isn't something I recommend. Culture. It's a buzzword we hear a lot about today. And if there's anybody you want to listen to about the constructs and just the strategy, the creation, the guidance of your corporate culture, it's today's guest, Robert Richman. In fact, he wrote the book called The Culture Blueprint. The Culture Blueprint is this step-by-step guide to shift and design your company's culture. You should know that Robert is the former manager and culture strategist for Zappos Insights. If you don't know who Zappos is, then you might have been living under a rock. We'll get to that here in a sec. Today he's an author, speaker, and culture architect. Really cool titles, Robert.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, seriously, it's as you know, because I've gushed about it, it's my new favorite book. It's just such a comprehensive guide to owning and operating a business, no matter what level of leadership you're at. And whether you're a startup or somebody that's been in business for decades, there's so much to be gained from this business guide. And that's how I think of it, as a business guide. It's there to guide people in business. So first, tell us about your background. Is intriguing, of course, because you spent 3 or 4 years at Zappos. And tell us who Zappos is and what you were doing there.
Sure. So Zappos.com is well known for being the biggest shoe store in the world. That's how it really started out, and then emerged into all kinds of other items because it became so well known for its customer service, and became known as being actually American Express's #1 brand of customer service according to their own customers. And the secret behind it has been the culture. So I was marketing a book called Tribal Leadership at the time that Tony Hsieh loved. I got it to him, the CEO. He invited myself and the authors there, and we presented about it. And it was there that he told me about his plan to take the culture and turn it into a product, an actual business service that Zappos could offer, because so many businesses were asking, how do you do it? How do you have a culture where everybody loves to work? They feel like it's like Disneyland, and you're satisfying customers and just completely owning the market. And I gave him idea after idea about how to convert that into a business, and eventually he said, can you come in here and help us do that? We don't have this as a core competency to do it. And I came in and launched an event, the first event, training outsiders how to do what Zappos did. And my intent was actually to just get a lot of content on video for it. But people loved it so much, they said the content was good, but it was the experience of being there that was amazing. So we built out a whole set of classes, tours, Q&As, consulting, speaking, and built it to a multi-million-dollar business where 25,000 people a year go through for anything for tours up to consulting through the Zappos Insights program. 25,000
people a year, and how many team members are there leading the Zappos Insights program now?
When I was there, we got it up to 20. It was just me and another guy just doing a proof of concept with a business, and then we built it up to a team of 20 to support the demand.
So people were already very interested in the Zappos culture, and some were even flying into Las Vegas just for that purpose of coming in, seeing what you guys were all about. And so you were tasked with turning this thing into a business inside of a business.
Right. How could we turn that into its own product? And so many different people, from entrepreneurs to college students to nonprofits to big, huge companies, were coming in. I was struggling to see what is it. What's the trend line of people coming through who really get culture? And the only thing I noticed that tied them all together were companies that were really all about growth. They found they were growing so fast that they realized it's not the strategy that is in control, it's not the leaders, it's not the market, but the culture is guiding everything. And that's when they would turn to Zappos Insights and say, how do you do this? How do you master culture?
Mm-hmm. And so, again, there are some people on the planet that don't know who Zappos is. And I'll just say that Zappos was sold to Amazon for some $1.2 billion in 2009. And the other thing that I love about Zappos is that they've never thought of themselves as a shoe company. That they think of themselves as a customer service company who happens to sell shoes.
Exactly.
So of course that resonates with me, and the whole customer experience piece of it is just awesome, and they live it. They really, really live it. So, all right, let's talk about, because culture is a buzzword, and it can mean different things to different people. And actually, you talk about in the book, you talk about some other buzzwords in business we're going to talk about that can mean different things to different people, and the danger in that. So how do you define and describe culture?
The way I describe it is it's literally a feeling. So when you go into an office or any organization or any culture, you immediately get a feeling just from a few interactions there. Mm-hmm. And anytime more than one person's in a room, there's culture there. And it's interesting because you'll go into any kind of organization, and usually that first instinct that you get from interactions, from just getting the sense of the vibe of it, is the same one that you'd have weeks later. And the interesting thing about that is people think, oh, the culture will take years and years to shift, but it can shift in a moment because it can be created in a moment. And companies like Zappos and the companies that are dedicated to creating a strong culture are simply creating that moment after moment after moment. It takes years to build something, but it takes just a second to destroy it. And through the recruiting program, the training, all that commitment to the core values, it's all about creating a culture where everybody is living it day in and day out, which is when I realized when a reporter from the Harvard Business Review came through and said he's been through the best companies in the world, met with heads of states, but had never been so warmly welcomed like he had at Zappos, and a tear in his eye. And I said, what
Wow.
was it? What was it, like some kind of major breakthrough conversation? He said, no, it was just people saying, hey, how are you? How you doing? Every single person genuinely caring and expressing their interest and desire to serve.
Yeah, and that's really neat. And the fact that it's a feeling, and the fact that he recognized that it wasn't put on, that it was genuine, it was authentic. I mean, it moved him, right? That feeling moved him. And too many businesses probably try to create something like that, and they go about it all wrong. And so they script certain things, and it just hits us the wrong way. So that's great. So it's this feeling, and I know that in the book, when you talk about values, you talk about the fact that if you want to know what your values are, then you can ask people who've stepped foot in or it doesn't even have to be a physical entity. It could be, they've visited your website or whatever the case may be. But you could ask them, what's the question that you say that you should ask them is, the thing that the people here are really about is fill in the blank. The people here are really all about fill in the blank. Isn't that?
Yeah.
Did I get it right? Okay. Yeah. So I love that. Just as somebody who consults with business owners on the customer experience, to ask those business owners, how do you think your prospects and clients would answer that question? Fill in the blank. The people here are really all about fill in the blank. I love it.
Yeah.
So why is culture so key, so important?
Because all business really is these days is communication. We have the same job, even though we might be doing different things. We're on email. We are on Google. We're researching. We're on phones. It's all communication, and all communication is sender and receiver, and that's just people. So when you think about it, your whole business is really just people. And if you have happy customers and happy employees, the business is going to do well. So no matter what the business model itself, the actual behaviors that are going on every day are communication and culture. So it's just kind of getting straight to the point. Wait a minute, it doesn't even matter your industry. We're both doing the same thing because it's all communication. Communication is just people.
All right, so you mentioned happy customers and happy employees, and so I feel like this is the whole chicken and egg thing. Do happy customers create happy employees, or do happy employees create happy customers? What comes first, the chicken or the egg? What's your...
Well, my thought is it really depends on the stage of the business, because the thing is, if you're a startup, it's really all about getting to market viability. You have to, or there's nothing to continue. So with that kind of culture, it's really about, the core values process with a startup is really about, okay, what values do we need right now to get us to that market viability? But once you've hit that point, especially that growth stage company, where you don't have to worry about starvation anymore, you don't have to worry about what's our runway to actually making this business work, at that point, it becomes about shifting to employee happiness, because the employers are going to keep the business driving and growing.
Good stuff. So, like anything in business, we have to start with vision, mission, values. I think I said vision twice. Vision, mission, values. And so, how do those three things differ in a nutshell?
Yeah. So, mission is it's actually, I think, the least useful because it never changes. It's just what you want to live day in and day out. At Zappos, it's to live and deliver wow. And that just has to be happening. But the vision and values get really interesting, because vision is meant to change every 3 to 5 years. It's something that you can definitively accomplish and say, we did that, and build upon it. So with Zappos, it was...
Is it like the horizon?
Yeah, okay. And it's like, at first, can we sell shoes online? Then it's, can this be the #1 shoe store in the world? Then it's, can this be a company all about service? Then can this be the best culture in the world? Now it's about, can it revolutionize a community and be a company that's part of a community in downtown Las Vegas? Each of those you can say, okay, we're doing that, we hit it, now we're moving to the next one. Whereas a lot of people, they'll go wrong with vision and say, we have the vision to be the best consulting company. What does that mean? It's got to be something accomplishable, and the values are the rules of how you do that day in and day out, and what you're not willing to sacrifice on. So with the Zappos story, it was about cutting 25% of brands who wouldn't sell the shoes directly to Zappos, because Zappos couldn't control the customer service experience if the brand was drop shipping it. So the best that Zappos could do is throw the shoe company under the bus for missing the service delivery. So it took cutting that off in the name of the values, losing 25% of revenues in a single day, but it was for that long-term play of becoming the best service brand in the world.
Yeah, and you talk about how, just coming back to your core values and making decisions based on those core values can sometimes be really tough, but it's also a very guiding thing to do. And I actually used that this week with a client. We were looking at, if we're all about the experience of the customer, then it really does start with values. And is everybody aligned? And let's talk about your personal values. Let's talk about your top performers' personal values. And I asked him, I said, read pages 45 to 62, the section on values, and in 3 days we'll get together and talk about it. And you say it doesn't happen in a weekend, so I didn't expect it was going to happen in that one meeting, but it started a really great conversation. And that's why I say this is a guide. It's just like, I love it.
Great.
So in the book, you remind us that we're still using military-style language in business. Words like strategy, recruit, train, execute, target, engage, all these military terms, which has you, it could have somebody think, like, is the corporate world a battleground? And that's another one, corporate battleground. We hear so many of these words and phrases and terms that are military-based in our language. And you talk about how everything starts with language. So why is this not a good thing?
It's simply an outdated thing, because the military analogy is based on limited resources, meaning two people can't own that land and say they both own it. And so that was an old term when industry was all about very physical goods. And now so much of industry has moved on to it being about communication. So much of it is computer-based, web-based, where duplicating your product actually has zero to little cost. So the way of communicating about business has completely changed, and now it's really becoming more about synergies, about networks, about what I like to say is hacking and creating systems, and that's the new language that's emerging, where it's not this resource-intensive win-lose situation.
All right, so we're definitely going to touch on hacking, because I think that's, for a lot of people it has a negative connotation, because nobody wants to get hacked, but you talk about it in a very positive and inspiring and innovative way, so we're going to get to that. Yeah. You also say that it's easy. This is your. I'm quoting on this. It's easy to forget that external success of an organization is positively correlated to its internal successes. Talk about that a little bit.
Tony actually taught me this phrase, which is that the brand is a lagging indicator of the culture. Whatever's happening inside is going to eventually make it to the outside. And it's you see in the best organizations in the world that there's not a difference between that. Like any company that's really, really dedicated to the values, you go in there and it's consistent with the products. It's true with Apple, the excellence there. You go into Apple and they're okay with yelling at each other and just getting on each other's backs for the details.
Not in the Apple store, but at Apple headquarters. Right. Okay, got it.
Right. And I actually tell people I think that Apple isn't so much interested in service. They're interested in excellence, and so this is just another thing they want to get right for excellence. It's more that they care about getting it right than they do about serving people.
That's
and
just a byproduct.
Service, right?
Very cool. We got to take a break. All right. So when we come back, you say share what you want to keep. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about culture hacks. We've got a lot more to come. You're watching We Mean Business. We're here with Robbie Richman, author of The Culture Blueprint. We'll be back in seconds.
So you can't save money? That's easy as pie. Brown bag your lunch instead of going out. $6 save times 5 days a week times 10 years is $21,000. That's a lot of lettuce. Small changes today, big bucks tomorrow. Feedthepig.org.
Welcome back to We Mean Business. I'm Steve Dorfman here with Robert Richman, author of The Culture Blueprint. And I promised we'd talk about this. You say share what you want to keep. And at first glance, I would imagine that a lot of people will have resistance to that until you explain how it works. So how does it work?
Yeah, so I really discovered this at Zappos because the company would be so open to sharing, from tours to meetings. You could meet with anybody in the company, and that was when I started putting the business model to it to charge for some of those. And people had said, but there was always the free tour, always free options, always the ability to get a free book, the culture book. And we would spend a lot of money on these things. And people would say, wow, how do you do that while giving away so much? And I started to make this correlation between there's the success of the business itself and how much Zappos was just giving and sharing and sharing. And I would see other companies that would do things like put together a culture book or make videos or make their culture available in public. And even just something like a small software company, one called Balsamic, and they would get these letters that said, I don't even need your product, but I want to buy it because I'm just so enthused by what you guys stand for and what you believe in. And it's, so companies would come in and I would say the best thing that you can do is share it, because not only does it get the word out there, it shows what you're proud of, but suddenly it holds you accountable to what you say you are. And if you're saying we live these values and this is who we are, and you're showing that whether by touring or giving away your practices that you do or putting a book together, suddenly people are going to hold you to that standard, and then it forces that accountability.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. So once you declare it, it's like, we better own this. We just declared it. I love that. And the other thing it has me think of, I just have to say that so many businesses believe they have a secret sauce. We had Marcus Sheridan on the show not too long ago, and he's the king of inbound marketing. He said, look, there is no secret sauce. McDonald's secret sauce is Thousand Island dressing, right? So there is no secret sauce. And you could pick up Tony Hsieh's book, and it's like, here's all Zappos secrets, which I guess means they're not really secrets, So, but what it has me think of is this: it's really about the scarcity versus abundance mindset. But the other thing it has me think about is if you share these things, that it's not like you're resting on those laurels. You're constantly innovating, and I know innovation is one of the things that you help companies with. So it's like you're not just giving away if people resist giving away their best stuff, quote, best stuff. I get this, I see this all the time. Why would I give away my best stuff? Well, if you're afraid to give away your best stuff, it means that's the only best stuff you're ever going to come up with. You believe that that's the only best stuff you're ever going to come up with, have ever come up with, and aren't going to innovate anymore in your life ever. So I just think it's this, scarcity sort of mindset.
Right.
But I love the idea of it holding you accountable to it.
Yeah.
Culture hacks. Let's talk about culture hacks. By the way, people can go to your website, cultureblueprint.com, and you've got if they just put their email address in there, they can download the top 10 culture hacks. And of course, they'll be alerted of when your book's coming out, which is fall 2013. Sorry, you can't have the book yet, but it's coming. So tell us about culture hacks. What the heck are culture hacks?
Sure. It's I got so much resistance consulting with people because they would say, "Oh, culture change takes years, and how are we going to really move the organization?" And I started to think about what can make change immediately, and who's really good at that. And I started to look at hackers, because hackers are people who, in the negative sense of the word, they see a big computer network, and they don't need to fix the entire network or change the whole network. They just find a spot where if they take an action, it'll take an impact on the whole network, in this case, bring it down. But if you have that mindset of, okay, I don't need an MBA, I don't need to be the CEO, I just need to figure out where is a part of the culture that is having a big impact on the rest of it. And if I find that and do something there, then that'll have a huge impact on the rest of the culture. And so I found that people were really interested in these hacks around culture, around leadership, all kinds of different hacks.
So what's a favorite hack?
Well, one hack that I like to tell somebody in a leadership position, because there's all kinds of different hacks, but one that was really popular was shut up. Is the hack.
Okay.
It's just to simply shut. It's that simple and easy, because what I found is working with leaders is leaders tend to be really the smartest people in the room. They're sharp. They started the business, and when you get everybody together to do something, they'd start launching in with their ideas, saying we got to do this, 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 and that, and it would kill all the conversation. It would kill the best ideas in the room. People would just check out because they said, okay, that's what we're doing. And instead, the leaders, I learned this a lot from Tony too, who were really effective, would kind of sit back and let everybody talk and see what's going on there. Notice the trends, notice the patterns, and then just kind of speak at the end and say, drop an amazing idea bomb or just say, okay, let's go with this, because they were really maximizing their entire team rather than having to be the smartest person in the room and say, okay, this is what we're going to do.
That's fantastic. And the other thing it has me think is, as a leader, to just have two ears and one mouth, but also at the end of that meeting to be able to say, you know what, drop that bomb, right? But give credit to the group because you just sat with them for an hour, 2 hours, whatever it was. Hey, guess what? You guys just inspired. Boom.
It's great.
Why not get? Yeah. So
that's awesome.
You recommend not measuring call times and not using scripts. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of like it relates back to a story of a guy who has 15 kids, and he was asked, how do you manage 15 kids? And he said, it's really simple, to have very few rules. And I think the rules were be respectful and be safe. And everything fell under that. And he could just say, do that, you follow that, there's not much to remember, and they had to take responsibility for it. And he'd ask, okay, well, how are you being respectful? How are you being safe? And it's about treating people like adults, even these kids in this case. So when you have to just dictate everything, people look to try to escape. They try to look for loopholes, whereas if you just give the directive and say, this is what I'm looking for, I trust you to figure out how to stay within that. That's what ends up people having strong connections with the customers.
I just took my nephews bowling, and they're 3 and 5, and it just has me think of those bumpers that come up in the gutters. It's like, there's your bumpers. Like, you can throw that ball, and it's going to bounce. It's going to hit some pins, but it's going to bounce from side to side because you've got your guardrails there, right?
Yep, totally.
So that's great. So I am also a little fed up with this buzzword buy-in, and you wrote a section titled the end of buy-in. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I find it to be a very manipulative phrase. It's really built into the language of, you've only got so much money, I'm going to sell you on this, I'm going to convince you on this, and take your resource and use it for my project. That's what people start to get into the mindset of buy-in when they say that. Because it programs your mind to think that way, like a salesperson. And who wants to be sold? Nobody wants to be sold anything. What people like is enthusiasm. What people like is being aligned and sharing commitment. And I actually realized this in your brand, which is being such an integral part of Acura. We both drive Acuras. I absolutely love it. And I was with the salesperson, and I didn't feel like I was being sold. He was just sharing his passion. And I loved hearing about it, and I just got so excited about it that I wanted to be a part of that. So I didn't feel like I was being sold, maneuvered, manipulated. He was just sharing from a genuine place of passion, and it aligned with my passions.
It has me think about something else. There's a Gallup poll that looked at customer expectations, and it really was under the context of how to convert prospects into advocates. So, which is interesting in itself because it's prospect to advocate. Where's the buying, right? But I guess it assumes that if you're an advocate, you've probably bought. But even if you hadn't, that's okay. If you're an advocate, we love you. So anyway, the 4 levels of customer expectations are accuracy, availability, partnership, and then advice and learning. And so the third highest level, so they're in order of importance. So the second most important is partnership, and it sounds like that's what you're describing is a sense of partnership. A little bit. I mean, it was the enthusiasm, right, and that you were feeling as a customer there, but you felt like more than a customer, right? You felt like I want a piece of this excitement, and I kind of feel like I'm partnered with this salesperson, and that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
When we talk about hiring and firing, how can we be sure that somebody's a good culture fit?
Yeah, well, once you're clear on that on the values, which I outline the process in the book, is you align all the questions to that. So a lot of people think that it has to be all skill-based, but skills can really be trained. But if you take a value, for example, like service, and ask somebody a question that has nothing to do with their resume and say something that teases out, do you like to be of service? The easiest way to have great customer service is hire people who love to be of service. It's not a skill, it's a value, it's an interest, and it can be trained if they love to do it. So you ask a question like, tell me a time when you went out of your way to help somebody. It's not something that's not on a resume, but it's a great cut-to-the-truth question to figure out if they really value it.
And you can't just sit across from somebody in an interview and say, do you value service? Is customer service in your DNA? Because they're going to tell you what you want to hear, of course. But by asking for a story, it's just so telling. And not enough of this happens in interviews to get prospective, employees to share a story like that. Tell me about a time you went above and beyond for somebody. It's just so telling. Like, what are they including? What are they excluding? What's even in their awareness in what they share about that story, right?
Totally.
Or in that story.
Yeah.
We hear so much today about the power of story. Mm-hmm. Speaking of story and storytelling, so how does that fit into all this? Because I know you touch on that in the book as well.
Yeah, everybody not only loves story, but loves to be a part of a story. So what I found was that the best companies had almost like a creation myth. Like, everybody knew how it started. Everybody knew the highs and lows, what people had risked to get there, and could feel that sense of pride. And then they become a part of the story, because the next part of that vision is, okay, how do we accomplish this? And so I'm proud of everything I represent, of everything we came here, and now I'm a part of this larger vision. And the way I really felt that was at Zappos when I went through the training, and we put on, because everybody goes through customer service training and becomes part of that, and these epic stories that have happened. So the first time I actually put on a headset, we all did it all at once as a group. Looking out, it felt like it was a NASA launch, like to the moon, like that important.
Wow.
Like, we are taking on this brand. We are part of this huge tradition, and that's where story comes in.
Oh, that's so cool. So most companies that anybody knows anything about, like the big names that we would all recognize, of course have advertising budgets. I don't know that many of them have a customer experience budget. Should they?
Absolutely. I mean, the early stories of Zappos was everything in marketing was actually directed to the customer experience budget, because the bet was back then, and this was the 90s where it was not clear, was that word of mouth would excel over media ads, and people would trust their friends and family if they spoke of it more than a Super Bowl ad. And now there's all kinds of metrics to prove that. And if you can create something that's not just a good experience, but what would be a wow experience? What's as Seth Godin would call a remarkable experience that is just so great that you feel compelled to share it?
You also talk about, you list several immediate wins and silver bullets. Mm-hmm. What are those? What does that mean?
Yeah, those are things that can be done to just affect change within the moment. And I must admit, I'm blanking on what one of those are at the moment.
That's okay.
Because there's just, as you said, it's a long guide, and there's lots of different things that can be done.
We have a minute left, so yeah. I definitely want to make sure I get to this question anyway. So the question is, there's a lot of business owners today, you and I both know, that will say, and they really believe, that, look, at the end of the day, it's just about who's got the lowest price. This whole customer service thing, customer experience, yeah, I get it that it's important. But at the end of the day, the customers, they're just going to go where they get the lowest price. What do you have to say to those people?
It all is fine and dandy until you have an awful experience. And then it's like you're willing to switch airlines, you're willing to switch banks, you're willing to, when you have that awful experience. And the thing is that's so fascinating about Zappos is the word has spread out that you're going to be taken care of if something goes wrong. So it's actually not even about needing to use that. You don't ever want to have to use an insurance policy, but it's just that feeling of safety is there if you're ever going to need it. And I think anybody who's ever had a really bad experience, I had one with a terrible bank where I was just held hostage, and I felt like my money was being held hostage, and it feels like such a violation that people will really do whatever they can to make sure they don't go through that negative experience. And that's why the brands that are paying attention to service are securing their customers.
Robert,
It's all good.
thanks for reading, man. So you've been watching We Mean Business. Go get your name. Go to the Culture Blueprint, or Culture Blueprint, right? Without the cultureblueprint.com. Put your name in there. Put your email address in there, and get the top 10 culture hacks. Robert will let you know when this book's available. It'll be fall 2013. Get the book. Trust me on this. I personally guarantee you'll love it. You've been watching We Mean Business. I'm Steve Dorfman. To learn more about today's show and Robert Richman, you can always visit wemeanbiz.tv. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.